Okay, got the A team here. We're going to talk about teams. If you don't know the A team, you should know about the A team. Grew up watching the A team, and love it when a plan comes together. We're going to be working in teams from here on out. And obviously, this whole book, obviously is about team writing. And these first two chapters really talk about putting together, thinking about how a team can collaborate, and then starting to identify some roles. Today we're going to talk about these two chapters, talk about some of the genres that you're going to have to write in as a team. We're going to talk about the different strategies for working together and how that might look over the course of the semester. And we'll talk about the project manager role. We'll talk about this. Then we'll sort of transition. We'll talk about the assignment description, and then we'll break up. I'm going to break up into groups, and you'll be able to start thinking about what do we want to do, and that's gonna take some effort. A lot of our time, often our time in class, throughout the next couple months, will sort of be split. We'll have a little group discussion, a little presentation early from me about the readings and just about points, and I'll sort of talk about things that are shared in common among all the groups. But then a lot of the time will be for groups to just sort of meet face to face and have a team meeting and sort of move the ball forward. There will be obviously some presentations in the middle. Once again, and I sort of previewed this on Thursday, Project 2 is going to be like you're making the pitch for the problem, the issue your team wants to focus on. And so and there's some criteria that we'll look at, but basically it's a pitch. Here's the problem we want to do. It's a proposal to work on a project. And then around spring break, you're going to give an update, like a progress report presentation. There'll be a written genre 2 where you will identify the medium you're going to use for your visual presentation. And then at the end, you will give a 25-minute presentation on your actual proposal, whatever it is you're proposing to do. And that's 25 minutes for the whole group. These are going to be groups of about 4 people, so a couple of groups of 5. And so our task now in the next couple of weeks is just to start to figure out who our group is, what are the roles, and what's the basic issue we want to focus on and why. And then you'll have to start doing, you'll get some feedback, and then you'll start the process of doing research and coming up with some solution to a problem. But we'll talk about, when we get to the assignment description, we'll maybe flesh that out again, which will be a little bit of a repeat from Thursday. But 8 teams, all right. So the first chapter, is talking about alternate collaboration methods. And you sort of need to sort of understand the model of each of these and think about how to use them in different ways to accomplish the overall goals of turning in a successful project, because you're all going to share the same grade. And you're all going to share the same grade. Working in teams is challenging, and there's people have different approaches, and we see some of those descriptions right at the beginning of the chapter. With these 3 little interviews, people talking about it. Sometimes, group members try to do everything. Sometimes some group members don't contribute enough. Sometimes talking to each other is challenging. Collaborating is always a difficult thing to do. It's not just class collaborations that are difficult to do. From my perspective, collaborating with colleagues is hard to do because the fact of them, it's the same. You know what? It's the same. Some people don't pull their own weight. Some people do extra. And the challenge is like balancing that, getting everyone to come together so we achieve our goals. And dealing with human people are messy. People are complicated. Working with people is always complicated. So it's about, figuring out how to acknowledge, deal with those complications. We're all kind of weird. Dealing with those issues, those personality issues. Sometimes there's conflicts. Sometimes there's disagreements. Sometimes you can't stand somebody. And that's true in class, isn't it? Sometimes you can't stand somebody in class and you're in a group with them. And it's the same in real life. I mean, it's the same for me. Like, so I can't stand this person. I hate it when she talks, but I've got to work with her. And that's just, you got to figure it out, So I think it's real. I think it's life. I think this is, hopefully you feel like this is a valuable sort of thing to sort of like have this attention. And this will be important to your career as you move out of beyond Wayne State. Okay, so face-to-face, divided, layered. What are these things? Here we are, face-to-face. Yes, face-to-face. There's a little, like, page 7 is a good, page 7 and 8. A couple good places to look to refresh your memory. Right, so some of the advantages of working face-to-face. And you could draw on your own experience or look at this.
Instant communication.
What's that?
Instant communication.
You have instant communication, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, right. You don't have to wait for a text or an email. We're right here. What else would you add? All the nonverbal stuff is there. And that's helpful because sometimes, when you read an email or a text, you're like, why are you being a dick? But they're not, maybe they're not, because you don't really know and you can't always tell, but face to face, you get those other things along with it. And that helps you sort of understand each other's motives and, et cetera. Yeah, Nick.
Teammates are held more accountable than if they can disappear into the ether.
Right, you're present, so accountability is a thing there. But that can be challenging too, can it, to hold someone accountable face to face? That is a difficult thing to do, to say, I mean, certain personalities can do it, or people can say, Brandon, look, you're not pulling your weight here, and I need you to do this. I'm not saying you're not, but as an example, that's a difficult thing to do. But you can sort of, sometimes people also deal with, some people do that face to face. Sometimes you can sort of like, use peer pressure to kind of like, hey, we're working on this. Hey, can you come help us out or something? Different tactics. You got to sort of figure out what you're comfortable with, what you can, what you feel like you can do. Anything else?
You can slap people.
Slap people? Well, not in this class. I'm afraid slapping is definitely not permitted, but you could, I suppose. But you can metaphorically slap people in emails, right? So the book here, they identify some other things that we might think about. They say useful for brainstorming, debating, fleshing things out, because it's easy to get everyone to sort of voice their opinion sometimes. But that's something too, like you have to make sure everyone feels like they've got a chance to talk. Sometimes some people don't feel comfortable talking and they want to sort of think about it, maybe send something later, but good for drafting plans, outlines, task schedules, like, meeting, like when are we going to meet again, like schedule stuff. It's easier to get everyone to sort that out while they're all there. Graphic design stuff. Some of the drawbacks, it does take a lot of time. You all have to meet, but most of our face-to-face time will be here, like I said, in class. So that's sort of done for you. It's not a great time to draft text, right? And you will be drafting text as a group. I mean, you each will have your own present. Like every time your group does a presentation, each person will have a distinct speaking role. But then you'll turn in a written version of your, like you're gonna turn a written version of project 2 of your proposal. That's one document, and everyone's gonna have to contribute to writing that. So, you know, this is not the place to do that. This might be the place to brainstorm issues in that, but this is not the place to write it. That's something you do out of class. Okay, divided. What's the divided model? Everyone, yeah, it's minimal. This is the minimal level of collaboration. Everyone's kind of siloed onto a project. They've got a focus, and that's what they're doing. And so it's a little bit different. So this, you know, this just allows for speed. You know, everyone's got a task. You do that. Let's bring it all together. Whatever. But it can be difficult if someone doesn't do their task. Nobody else has got their back. You know, until it might be too late. So that's something to think about when you're scheduling. You know, make sure. You know, it might be good for an early stage. Like, all right, everyone draft this. Bring it next time. We'll take a look what everyone's got. And then if you build in a little bit of, and this they talk about this a little bit later when you're scheduling. You need to have cushion. You know, and if someone drops the ball, you can figure out at that face-to-face meeting, all right, how are we going to recover this part, and you know, whatever it is, and put it together. In terms of writing, right, like style and tone can suffer because there isn't one voice. There's multiple voices. So you are gonna, like, your whole group is gonna write these written projects, but you still want it to be cohesive. You still want it to sound like one voice. So that's something that you're gonna have to think about, and you know, in terms of time and attention. Layered, the layered model. How would you describe the layered model?
Building on top of each other.
Yeah, building on top of each other, taking turns working on something. Like everyone's working on the same thing, maybe with a slightly different, you know, focus than each other. So this helps in, like as the book explains, this, you know, helps ensure a high quality product. Everyone has a chance to contribute, to add their perspective, to maybe help critique other parts of the work. Lots of, you know, it maximizes contribution. Everyone's engaged. It requires everyone to be engaged. Right, so some of the problems, there might be some unequal work. Depending on roles, people still contribute less than others. That's always part of it. And it definitely takes a lot of planning up front for this to be successful, for this to work. When you work on drafting your written versions, you're going to want some version of this layered approach in there. Because, you know, let me maybe back up. So, like, a couple ways to think about how to implement these strategies. So today, you're going to use some face-to-face collaboration strategies to start to get the ball rolling, to start thinking about, like, who are we? What kinds of projects might we work on? What do you guys think? Let's make a list. Let's narrow it down, right? Like that kind of rough work, just to get it started. Later on, like let's say after we finish project 2, you're probably going to need a layered approach where people do different research on different aspects related to the overall project. And so, like, you know, you can say, Danny, I need you to figure out this issue. Brandon's going to figure out this issue. Nick, you're going to do this issue. And we're going to bring all of that together when we meet. And then we'll compare notes and start to figure out how we can make connections between those, right? But that will require, like, each of you spending maybe a couple weeks just reading articles on this one thing. The layered approach, right? So when you write the final report, it's going to require each of you to bring your expertise, your particular knowledge set that you've developed over the semester, add that, but someone also will still have to sort of maybe pay attention to the Do we have a consistent tone? Do we have transitions between sections? Brandon wrote section 1, Nick wrote section 2. Do these parts connect with each other? And someone else will have to do that, perhaps. Or maybe it's one of you who has that role of going through the whole document, right? So one of the tasks for project 2 now is to develop a schedule. So you'll want to think about, when you're developing that schedule, today and Thursday, about how to use these strategies, when to use them, who's going to be responsible for them, etc. And that's something that might change as you go, but you'll need to think about it early on. Questions about those? So there's some examples on page 10 of some schedules, like how to think about what things we need to do and what might be the best way to do them. That's something you'll want to sort of think about early on here. There's examples of what that might look like on 10, so that's a reference point for you. We'll talk about project 2, or project manager, that's chapter 2. So project manager, you want to figure out, and I'm going to ask for volunteers in a minute, people who are interested in being a project manager, because you'll have a lot of responsibility. So the way I want to approach it is to start with volunteers, and if I have enough, then I'll sort of form the groups around those project managers, and we'll sort of move forward. So project managers play a specific role. They track the status of the project, make sure we're meeting, these sort of threshold deadlines along the way, these milestones. Make sure team members are on track, so you got to sort of, send emails to people, make sure they're doing their role, that they understand what's going on. Okay. Some duties including creating, maintaining a task schedule. Although your group will sort of will start to put the task schedule together, but you'll probably leave maybe today or Thursday with notes, and someone will have to write those notes into a formal task schedule. That would be a project manager's job, probably. Document action items in meeting minutes. So you're going to have meetings in class here, and you need to leave with action items, with specific goals. Christian, this is what you need to do. Christian's going to do this. Okay, Calvin's going to do this, and Noor's going to do this. And so this is everyone's job. Bring that back to when we meet again, and we can, then we can keep moving forward, right? So those need to be negotiated sometimes. And someone needs to document those negotiations and document what we've agreed that we're going to do. And then you need to write it down. And after you come to an agreement in a face-to-face meeting, you need to write an email that summarizes those agreements and holds everyone accountable and reminds people, because sometimes people forget or they lost their notes or whatever. Those things happen. Manage disagreements. So disagreements are going to happen. It might be like some of the hardest things will be here early on. What are we going to focus on? That there might be some disagreements there, and you're going to have to negotiate those and come to a compromise. And those compromises should include the perspective of all members of the team, but someone needs to document and manage that conversation. And once you come to a decision where there's some disagreement, and you can decide how formal you want that to be. Do you want to move to, you can, that's how committees work. And, we'll use some version of Robert's Rules of Order. Okay, is there a motion to accept this proposal? Do we want to second it? Do we want to vote, or do we want to keep discussing it? You could be formal, or you can just sort of be more informal and just seek, do we all agree? Does anybody else want to keep talking? Can anybody compromise to accommodate this perspective? Make sense? And keep the group on task by writing meeting agendas. So before you meet, hey, class tomorrow, here's what we need to talk about. All right, those kinds of things. Other key duties might include some of these things: setting reminders about key dates, communicate with me about any problems in the group, although anybody could do that, obviously. Creating a straw document for the project. What's a straw document?
Will it be the kind of like the line that keeps it together, like the what it's going to be about?
Yeah, I think that's. Explain a little bit more.
So basically, all the little steps that we need to achieve what we want, like almost like the storyline for the document. So
Yeah, a storyline for the document. I could agree with that. Sort of the sections, maybe. Here are the sections that we need for the document. So you might create the initial Google document, for example, with all the sections. Okay, we need to start completing this. We need to start filling these sections out. Or maybe there's like a section with a little bit of text that like, here we need to talk about this. Here we need to talk about this. And then that gets replaced with the more formal version. So the straw document's just like, it's sort of like, here's all the parts. Now let's start filling it in. You might have to produce other documents, and some examples include project plans, team charters, progress reports. And these will be required. And so this is sort of like in general terms, but in the context of this class, these will be more collaboratively developed. The project plan is sort of project 2. The team charter is part of project 2. The progress report is project 3. There's some more description of these in chapter 2. Minutes are important, and this won't be necessarily the job of the project manager, but someone should be responsible for minutes. And there's an example of meeting minutes on page 18. There's examples of what an agenda email might look like on page 20. Email reminders. You want to be kind when you send email reminders. Be gentle. Hey everyone, just a friendly reminder. We're meeting in the UGL this weekend at this time, or whatever it is you're doing, or we're meeting online, whatever. Okay. It's a good idea to send reminders for meetings, especially if they're going to be outside of this class, because people will forget. There's an example of a straw document on page 24. No. Sorry, I'm wrong. These are just this. Page 24 has got descriptions of other kinds of documents and we'll be working on those. So that's a good thing to sort of keep your thumb on. Any questions about sort of project manager role? Okay, let's look at the assignment description again, and then we will start breaking up here into groups. I've lost the internet. Kind of small, right? Is that readable for you guys? All right, so we're working towards 12 to 15 minute oral briefing. Let's look at it might be easier to look at, so where's here, let's look at the outline. So some of the things you're gonna have to deliver. Introducing the team members, that's something you need to figure out. Who are we? What are our credentials? What are our majors? What are, interests? And, the purpose of the presentation, you'll talk a little bit about that. It's going to be an extemporaneous style, just like before. So someone will do an introduction section, and then you'll have people do body sections where they might talk about some aspect of your presentation overall. And then you have a conclusion section where you sort of summarize what everyone said. And you're gonna, end with a sort of remind them about some major point about your project. You want to think about things like, why is this project important? Why is it feasible? Why is it something that we should invest? You want to sort of think about the situation, the rhetorical situation, as a moment where you're saying, we want to address, this is a problem, here's a problem. We want to investigate and address this problem. And here's why. And here's why you should invest in this or provide us with the resources to work on this project, right? Here's why this is an important project to work on, to spend our time working on. And then there'll be some question and answer, some feedback. Let me scroll back up. The main focus of this is you sort of want to think about an organization you're trying to talk to, that you're sort of imagine yourself working in, and so you want to think about what when I think about an organization that you belong to or that you work at, an organization containing members of people you have contact with, some segment of the university, and you come up with a topic. The topic should be specific, so I'm looking here. So the topic should be specific, technical, and appropriately complex. Overly general topics not connected to the concrete needs of people, groups, or organizations, like a non-technical overview of alternative energy types, will not fare as well as topics grounded in technical or professional problems currently being addressed by people or organizations you can study or have access to. For example, a recently articulated goal of converting the College of Engineering building to 50% alternative energy sources. Consider drawing a topic related to your professional field of study. You might think about problems affecting Detroit and Wayne State, topics related to the use or development of technology that it might affect your different fields or institutions or workplaces. Topics might include things like improving the campus shuttle systems, improving campus sustainability, extending the reach or technologies of urban farming, green alleys or roofs. So you can think about, you can go in lots of different directions. You might think about, I would suggest think about issues happening in your local sort of our communities around. You might think about Metro Detroit, our need for public transportation. You might think about problems at Wayne State that you see that might have a technical aspect to them. You might think about broader social issues that have a technical aspect to them, something connected to computer science or engineering or whatever. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? Okay, I'm going to stop this recording and we're going to break up into groups. Who's interested in who would be interested in being a project manager?